Voucher, hello and welcome to the Whisky vlog of Whisky Tour Guide Keith. My name is Keith. Today we'll do a little tasting review for you, and the whisky that we are going to review, you can see the carton sitting here, the Glenfarclas 105. Now this has a bit of a reputation. It's known as a bit of a sherry monster. The Glenfarclas distillery mature their whisky in sherry casks, former sherry casks. And this one here comes in at 60% ABV. The 105 comes from the old imperial measurement system, 105 proof, hence the name Glenfarclas 105. It is the strongest regular issue single malt, 60%. So quite rightfully known as the sherry monster. I love the packaging, the black and red. For me it gives it a bit of a dangerous edge. It's almost like sort of pirate's whiskey, or maybe a bottle of poison, something like that. One of my favourite pubs up on Speyside is the Craig Bar in Granton-on-Spey. So hello to Beryl and Robbie if you're there. Now this is Robbie, it's his favourite whiskey, and he's all sorts of stories about it. It used to be the most expensive whiskey in his pub. He'd have all the standard age statements, he'd have nothing too exclusive, but this was his most expensive single malt. He doesn't like to rip people off, he gets it as cheap as he can, he sells it as cheap as he can. And one of the stories he told me about the 105, he said these Dutch guys came in, Keith, and they said, "Oh Robbie, our friends were here last year, they told us all about you, they said you're the whiskey expert, you know everything about Speyside whiskey, what whiskey should we have?" He said, "What's your favourite whiskey, Robbie?" And he said, "Jim Beam." Like, Jim Beam? No, Robbie, we're here on Speyside. We're not wanting Jim Beam, we're wanting a Speyside single malt. He says, okay. He says, "I'll tell you what my favourite whiskey is, but on one condition. You're not allowed to order any, you can't buy any." And they say, "Well, why not?" He says, "It's too expensive, I'm not selling it. I'll tell you what it is though." "Oh, what is it, Robbie?" And he said, "Well, it's the Glenfarclas 105, 60%. It's my favourite whiskey, rich." And they said, "6 of those please, Robbie." It's like, "No problem." 6 whiskies, just like that. They're always full of these wee stories. I'm a tour guide. What I do, my stock in trade, is to steal little stories off barmen, steal stories off tour guides, steal the stories off the distillery guides. So that's a little story that I borrowed from Robbie. Great guy, great bar. If you're ever on Speyside, you're ever near Granton-on-Spey, in you go, check out Craig Bar. Great little bar, great little pub. You'll see above the bar the Glenfarclas 105, a little hand-drawn painting of it. Robbie's favourite whiskey. Okay, so we'll get the 105 out of its box for you. As you can see, I've been at this one, I've had it for a little while now. It generally comes in, it's said to be between 8 and 10 years old. It's not got an age statement. Over the years it has had an age statement now and again. It was once an 8-year-old, it was once a 10-year-old. There's been special editions, I think quite old ones, maybe I think there was a 40 and maybe a 30-year-old. Just recently there was a 22-year-old special edition, but generally, as you'll see on this one, it comes without an age statement. So Highland single malt Scotch whisky. Now it says Highland, but Glenfarclas is on the River Spey, basically just over the road from the River Spey. I'll go into this in a bit more detail in another vlog, but you do get some distilleries on Speyside which class themselves as Highland. Macallan, one of the biggest. If there was enough rain, Macallan would slide into the River Spey, but it classes itself as a Highland. Somewhere like Dalwhinnie is a distillery that is on one of the tributaries of the River Spey, but it's also classed as a Highland distillery. Ben Romach is in the next valley along from the River Spey, the Findhorn Basin if you like, but it classes itself as a Speyside. So you don't have to be on Speyside to be a Highland or a Speyside, you don't have to be in that region. This sort of predates the classification of the regions, but as I say, I'll talk about that another time. So it says Highland, but Glenfarclas comes from Speyside. It's a lovely distillery on the mainland. Glenfarclas is my favourite distillery to visit. Now, it might surprise you, but quite often, again in my job as a tour guide, I'll go into distilleries, I'll take groups of people in from all around the world, And it stuns me that these people, these potential customers, are not welcomed in. In you come, what would you like? Can I pour you a drink? Glenfarclas are excellent with their customer service. Some other distilleries leave quite a lot to be desired, and it always surprises me. But I'm not going to be negative, I'm going to extol the virtues of Glenfarclas. It is an independent distillery. It's in the 6th generation now of the Grant family. Now when I say the Grant family, up on Speyside, well, you've got Glen Grant, for instance, the distillery, but lots of distilleries are owned by different Grant families. So you'll see the same surname, but they are different families. I think in the old days, Clan Grant was up in this area. This is the River Spey Valley here. The Glenfarclas distillery is about here. It's about halfway between Aberlour. Whisky fans will know Aberlour. There's a distillery in Aberlour. But the address for Glenfarclas is Ballindalach, which is just 3 or 4 houses really. It's a little small hamlet. There is now a Ballindalach distillery as well. It's still quite young. It'll only be 3 or 4 years old, so they might have some whisky. I'm not quite sure. Certainly not tried it yet. So Glenfarclas, about halfway between Aberlour and Ballindalach on the River Spey. Glenfarclas, again, this is an anglicisation, the name of the old Gaelic, and it just meant something like the Valley of the Green Grass. Glenfarclas, that's where the name comes from. It's a lovely distillery, independent. I've heard stories that big conglomerates have come in, they've basically offered them a blank cheque, write your own figure, we'd like to buy your distillery, we'd like to own your whisky, and they have politely declined. We have our family distillery, we make the whisky the way that we like it, in the sherry casks, we take our time, and thank you, but no thank you. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. So, see if there's anything on the bottle that I can read out to you. Say cask strength, it says, assertive, amazingly smooth for the strength, and wonderfully warming. I suggest adding a little water to fully explore the 105's great depth. And that's from George S. Grant, one of the previous owners. Now, one of the reasons I really enjoy going to Glenfarclas is the warm welcome. It's a lovely little distillery because it's independent. There's no sales pressure, there's nothing like that. And they're very generous at offering you, or in my case when I'm taking tourists in there, offering them a little free dram, a little snifter to sample the Glenfarclas. And the Glenfarclas tasting room as well. Beautiful room. It's a reconstruction of an old officer's mess on an old steamship, the SS Empress of Australia. So you've got oak panelled walls, you've got chandeliers, beautiful big wooden tables, and lovely comfy armchairs all round. Beautiful place to have a whisky. And as the guides, there's 1 or 2 guides, some great guides in there. Matthew, Donna, as they'll say, if you're having a 105, don't be too shy, and sometimes order the Glenfarclas 210. Hopefully you understand. 2 of them, why not? Order a double. So now for a little bit of a tasting. I'm going to obviously nose the good old Glenfarclas. I'm going to taste it for you, and then we'll add a little bit of water as well. And got a little cork there, and then we'll tell you a little bit more about it. So, little swirl. It's very rich. Although it's quite young, it's not too sharp. It's quite deep, quite full-bodied. You certainly get a lot. It's like a sort of dark toffee, a dark treacle. You get a little bit of the wood, a little bit of the oak, and obviously a bit of that sherry, a little bit of the sweetness coming through as well. Now, I'm just going to take a little second before I have this. 60%. It comes at you. It's not for the faint-hearted. So yeah, really strong, full-bodied. Certainly, you still get that toffee, the sherry sweetness, a little bit sweeter actually in the mouth than you get from the nose. Even a little bit dry. Certainly get a little bit of that. Now, as I say, quite strong. Now what I'm going to do next is add a little bit of water. I'm a little bit reticent. I generally drink my whiskey neat. Depends on the whiskey, but in the main. But when you add water to the 105, I liken it to dropping in a hand grenade. It just explodes. It's already strong. Often you'll add water to calm something down. When you add water to the 105, as I say, it's just so good luck to me. Trusty Lefroy jug. As always, just going to pop in. Well, I'll do 2 or 3. I don't know what we do. We'll go for the 3 drops. So minimal amount of water, just purely for tasting purposes, just to try and, as we like to say, open it up a little bit. Much sweeter now. And when I mentioned the sort of the dark toffee in the nose earlier, I would now say it's just your sort of normal toffee, more sort of caramel. So lighter, sweeter. And it's almost, you get the sherry coming up the outside of your nostrils, the top of your nose. It's really nice actually, really nice on the nose. I'd forgotten how nice it was on the nose with the water, but here it goes for the in the mouth. Yep, again, full-bodied, in your face. Sherry Monster is very apt. You get that sherry and you get lots of it, and really a lot more wood as well. That oakiness, not quite bitter, but that sort of varnished wood, I would say, something like that. Lovely. So there you go. That's my impressions of the Glenfarclas 105. If you see this, don't be scared. Give it a shot. Get yourself a bottle. It's a winter whiskey. Need warmed up. Christmas, something like that. In the deep dark midwinter, you might fancy warming yourself up in the evening. Pour yourself a 105, or as I said, pour yourself a 210. Glenfarclas 105, if you cannot get it where you are, I like to recommend similar whiskies. I mentioned Aberlour just along the road, the village of Aberlour. So you have the Aberlour distillery, and they have a whisky called Abuna, which is A-B-U-N-A-D-H, which is Gaelic. And Abuna, I think it means something like the origin or original. And Abuna, it's quite a rough whiskey. It's made using traditional methods, so it's not like your standard single malts, and it comes in usually between about 59 to 61%, so it's right up there next to the 105 in strength terms. So Aberlour Abuna, if you try this you might like that as well. Another one would be, let me think, say something like the Talisker Port Rue. So Port, P-O-R-T, R-U-I-G-H-E, Port Rue. and that's a non-age statement from Talisker. As the name suggests, it's got a port cask influence. Portree is the main town on Skye, the Isle of Skye, where the Talisker distillery is. So Portree is a play on the name Portree, mentioning port, and that's a very nice whisky. It's only maybe in the mid 40s, 45, 46% I think, the Portree, but if you like this, heavy on the sherry, try the Portree from Talisker as well. Another one, it's maybe not quite like the 105 in nature, but Glenfarclas have a whole range of age statements, 10, 12, 15, I think they've got an 18, 21, 25, and they go up to quite old ages also. So if you like the Glenfarclas 105, try one of their normal whiskies, and you'll get a good idea if you maybe try the Glenfarclas 15-year-old. That's one that I do particularly like. You can't really go wrong with any of them, but if you like the 105, give the Glenfarclas 15-year-old a little try as well. So there's 3 whiskies to try: Aberlour Abuna, the Talisker Portree, or the Glenfarclas 15-year-old. Okay, I bid you farewell, and as always, Slán Java, cheers.